What kind of woman throws out her grieving mother-in-law the day after her son's funeral? I'm Eleanor Fairfield, 67, a retired teacher who's buried a husband and now a son, left to pick up the pieces in a world that feels like it's crumbling beneath me. I sit in a sterile hotel room tonight, my suitcases stacked against the wall, their weight a reminder of how quickly life can unravel. 2 weeks ago, I was in the home I shared with my son David and his wife Stephanie, believing we were a family bound by loss. Now I'm alone, staring at a mirror that reflects a stranger. Gray hair, tired eyes, but something else stirring, a flicker of defiance. It started with a phone call that shattered my world, and I'm still piecing together how it led me here. The air smells of cheap cleaner, but my mind is sharp with memory, and I can still hear David's voice, breathless and scared, pulling me into the nightmare that would change everything. At 3:17 a.m., the phone jolted me awake. "Mom, something's wrong. My chest, I can't." David's voice cut off, and the silence that followed was louder than any scream. I threw on a coat, my hands shaking as I drove to the hospital, the streets blurring through tears I didn't yet know I was shedding. By the time I arrived, my 45-year-old son was gone. A massive heart attack, the doctor said, his voice flat, like he was reading a script. Stephanie stood beside me in the waiting room, her face pale, but there was something in her eyes. Relief? No, I told myself, it was grief, just wearing a different mask. "What happens now?" I whispered, my voice barely holding together. Stephanie straightened, her lips tight. "Now we deal with reality, Eleanor. David's gone, and I have decisions to make." The coldness in her tone sent a shiver through me, like a draft in a house I thought I knew. We'd never been close, Stephanie and I. David was the bridge, his warmth holding us together despite her sharp edges. He'd always been my anchor. My only child, born when I was barely 22, raised through lean years after his father died. 2 years ago, I sold my small home to give them $40,000 for their house down payment, moving in with the promise it was temporary. Temporary stretched into 2 years, and I'd settled into a routine, cooking dinners, tending the garden, feeling useful. But that morning, as Stephanie pulled her hand away when I reached for it, I felt the first crack in that illusion. "We'll see about that," she said when I offered comfort, her words sharp as a blade. I chalked it up to shock. People grieve differently, I reasoned, clinging to the hope we'd navigate this together. The next 3 days were a blur of funeral planning. I offered to cover costs. David was my son, after all, but Stephanie insisted on control. "I'm his wife," she said, her voice firm. "I know what he wanted." I nodded, focusing on the eulogy, calling relatives, trying to hold my heart together. At 67, I'd buried my parents, my husband, but losing David was a different kind of pain, like the world had tilted off its axis. The night before the funeral, I sat in David's old bedroom, now my room, staring at framed photos, his college graduation, his wedding to Stephanie, him holding his nephew last Christmas. But none of me, I realized. The pictures of us together, the ones from recent years, were gone. When had Stephanie removed them? A knock broke my thoughts. Stephanie stood in the doorway, her eyes hard. "We need to talk, Eleanor." The funeral was beautiful, I'll give her that. The lilies were perfect, the hymns David's favorites, the reception seamless. But Stephanie's performance as the grieving widow was too polished. Her comments about new chapters too pointed. Standing in the receiving line, accepting hugs and condolences, I overheard her whispering to her sister behind a floral arrangement. "The life insurance will cover the mortgage for 2 years," she said, her voice low. "And without the extra expenses." Her sister hesitated. "What about Eleanor? Where will she go?" Stephanie's laugh was sharp, like glass breaking. "That's not my problem anymore. She's an adult." My stomach twisted. I'd given them $40,000, lived with them, cooked, cleaned, yet I was an extra expense. The realization hit like a slap, but I kept my face neutral, nodding at mourners, my hands trembling. In the kitchen later, Stephanie closed the door, her voice all business. "This house is in David's name, which means it's mine now. You living here. It's not working." I stared, my heart pounding. "Stephanie, I know you're grieving, but surely we can." She cut me off. "I've made my decision. You have until tomorrow evening to pack." The cruelty stole my breath. Where was the woman who'd called me mom at Christmas? "Where do you expect me to go?" I asked. She shrugged. You're a grown woman, Eleanor. You'll figure it out. I waited for her to soften, to apologize, but she didn't. As I packed my life into suitcases, the walls of my sanctuary stripped bare, I felt the weight of her words. David would have been horrified. But David was gone, and I was alone. Driving to a hotel on Route 9, the rearview mirror showing Stephanie watching me leave. In the hotel room that first night, I unpacked only what I needed. A nightgown, toiletries, a photo of David from his college days that I'd slipped into my suitcase at the last minute. The bed was stiff, the pillows flat, but exhaustion pulled me under like a tide. Dreams came in fragments, David's laugh echoing in an empty house, Stephanie's face twisting into something unrecognizable. Morning brought no relief, just the dull ache of reality settling in. I stared at the ceiling, tracing cracks that looked like rivers on a map, wondering where my own path would lead now. My savings were modest. Social Security and my teacher's pension would cover basics, but a hotel wasn't sustainable. I needed a plan. But first I needed to process the betrayal that had landed me here. Stephanie's words echoed, "You're a grown woman, you'll figure it out." The casual dismissal stung more than the eviction itself. Over the next few days, I replayed the events leading up to that moment, searching for signs I'd missed. The funeral had been the turning point, but the warnings had started earlier. During preparations, Stephanie's efficiency had bordered on detachment. She'd chosen the casket with the same precision she used for grocery lists, dismissing my suggestions for personal touches. David wouldn't want anything extravagant, she'd said, though I knew he loved the simple hymn we'd sung at his father's service. I bit my tongue, reminding myself of grief's many faces. But in quiet moments her glances my way felt loaded, like I was an intruder in her mourning. One afternoon, while arranging flowers at the funeral home, I caught her on the phone in the hallway. "Yes, the policy is substantial," she murmured. "Enough to start fresh." Start fresh? The words hung in the air, but when she saw me, she hung up quickly, her smile too bright. "Just confirming details," she said. I nodded, but doubt seated itself in my chest. That evening, back at the house, I offered to make dinner, comfort food, lasagna like David loved. Stephanie waved me off. "I'm not hungry, you should rest." Her tone was polite, but her eyes avoided mine. I ate alone in the kitchen, the silence heavy, broken only by the tick of the wall clock. Upstairs later, I heard her voice through the vent, talking to her sister again. "Once this is over, things will change. No more dead weight." Dead weight? My fork paused midair. Was she talking about me? The conversation shifted to logistics, but the phrase lingered, a warning I couldn't ignore. I told myself it was stress, that losing David had unmoored her. But deep down I knew better. Our relationship had always been strained. David mediated, smoothing her barbs with his humor. Without him, the gloves were off. The funeral day dawned gray, matching my mood. I dressed in black, the dress I'd worn to my husband's service years ago, its fabric a familiar weight. At the church, relatives gathered, their condolences a blur of hugs and murmured sympathies. Stephanie stood tall beside the casket, accepting sympathies with graceful nods. I delivered the eulogy, my voice steady as I spoke of David's kindness, his laugh, the way he'd called just to check in. Tears came then, hot and unbidden. Afterward, at the reception, the house filled with people, neighbors, colleagues, family from out of town. I moved through the crowd, offering coffee, collecting plates, finding solace in busyness. That's when I overheard Stephanie again, this time in the living room corner with Marcus, her brother. "The house will be mine clear," she said softly. "And Eleanor, she'll have to go. Can't have her draining resources." Marcus murmured something about timing. "Right after," Stephanie replied. "No point delaying." My blood chilled. Draining resources? I'd contributed, the down payment, monthly help with bills, but to her, I was a liability. I slipped away to the bathroom, splashing water on my face, staring at my reflection. The woman looking back had lines of worry I'd never noticed before, eyes shadowed with more than grief. How had it come to this? David had insisted on me moving in after my house sold. "Mom, it's perfect. We have the space, and you can help with things." Stephanie had smiled then, but now I wondered if it was genuine. That night, after everyone left, the house felt empty, echoes of laughter mocking the silence. Stephanie poured wine, offered me a glass. "To David," she said. I clinked glasses, but her toast felt hollow. We sat in the living room, the fire crackling. "We need to discuss the future," she said finally. I nodded, expecting talk of shared memories. Instead, this arrangement. "It's time to end it." My glass trembled. End it? Yes, I need space, privacy. The words were direct, no sugarcoating. I searched her face for remorse, found none. "Stephanie, David's not here." The finality hit hard. She stood, signaling the conversation's end. "Tomorrow evening. That's fair." Fair? Nothing about this was fair. As I lay awake that night, anger mixed with sorrow. I'd given them stability, love, and now I was discarded like old furniture. But beneath the hurt, a resolve formed. I wouldn't beg. Morning came, and I began packing methodically, clothes folded, books boxed, mementos wrapped. Stephanie hovered, helping by carrying things downstairs, her efficiency a silent push. By afternoon, my car was loaded. "Will there be a will reading?" I asked, one last grasp at connection. "Why would he leave you anything?" Her puzzlement was genuine, laced with disdain. "You're not his wife." The irony burned, the $40,000 she'd forgotten or reframed as a gift. I drove away, the hotel looming like a temporary refuge. But in that drive, something shifted. Grief still clawed, but so did determination. Stephanie thought she'd won, but life had twists she couldn't predict. 2 weeks passed in a haze of apartment searches online, budget calculations, lonely meals. My savings dwindled, but I stretched them. Then the call came. "James Morrison, David's lawyer. Your presence is required at the will reading." Required? Stephanie had implied nothing for me. But David's wishes waited, a potential lifeline in the storm. The call from Mr. Morrison lingered in my mind like an unexpected ray of light piercing the gloom of my hotel room. But before I could fully grasp its implications, my thoughts pulled me back to that dreadful day. The eviction day, as I'd come to call it in my private reflections. It was the day after the funeral, a Wednesday that dawned too bright for the darkness in my heart. I'd barely slept. The sheets twisted from nightmares of empty rooms and locked doors. Stephanie's ultimatum from the kitchen echoed, "Until tomorrow evening." Part of me had hoped she'd wake with regret, perhaps softened by a night's reflection on David's memory. But as I descended the stairs that morning, coffee mug in hand, her face in the kitchen told me otherwise. She was already dressed in crisp slacks and a blouse, sipping tea at the table, her eyes flicking to the clock. "Morning," I said, my voice tentative. She nodded curtly. "You should start packing soon. I have errands to run." No apology, no hesitation, just efficiency, as if I were a tenant overdue on rent. I retreated upstairs, the stairs creaking under my feet like accusations. The room that had been my haven for 2 years now felt foreign, its walls closing in. I pulled suitcases from the closet, the zipper sounds harsh in the quiet. 4 suitcases and 2 boxes. That's what 67 years boiled down to. I started with clothes, folding blouses and skirts with care, each item stirring memories. The blue sweater David had given me for my birthday last year, soft wool that still carried a faint scent of his cologne from when he'd hugged me. "You look great in blue, Mom," he'd said. Tears blurred my vision as I placed it in the case. Then books, my teaching manuals, novels I'd read to David as a child, their pages yellowed but cherished. I wrapped fragile items next. A porcelain figurine from my mother, the wedding photo of me and my late husband, smiles frozen in time. Stephanie had never liked that photo on the dresser. Now I understood why. It represented a life before her, one she wanted erased. Downstairs, the house hummed with normalcy, the dishwasher running, the radio softly playing news. I heard Stephanie on the phone in the living room, her voice light. "Yes, everything's set. I'll be free by evening." Free. The word twisted in my gut. Was that how she saw me, a chain holding her back? I paused in the hallway, box in arms, catching my reflection in the mirror. Who was this woman, bent under the weight, eyes red-rimmed? Not the strong teacher who'd shaped young minds for decades, not the mother who'd raised a kind son. But Stephanie had reduced me to this, and I let her. Anger flickered then, small but real, fueling my movements. I packed faster, adding kitchen items I'd bought, the mixer, the set of knives. Were they mine or theirs? It didn't matter. I took what fit. A knock at the door startled me mid-afternoon. It was my sister, dropping off a casserole before her flight. "Eleanor, what's all this?" she asked, eyeing the boxes. I forced a smile. "Just reorganizing." But her hug lingered, as if she sensed the lie. Stephanie appeared then, charming as ever. "Thanks for coming. Safe travels." No mention of my leaving. By late afternoon, sweat dampened my back, the physical labor a distraction from the emotional storm. I sat on the bed for a moment, holding David's childhood baseball glove I'd found in a drawer. He'd kept it all these years, a relic of simpler times. "Mom? Watch this pitch." His young voice echoed in my head. Grief crashed over me anew, mixing with betrayal. How could Stephanie do this now when the wound was raw? I wiped my eyes, zipped the last suitcase. At exactly 6 p.m. she appeared in the doorway, arms crossed. "Time's up, Eleanor." Her voice was flat, no room for negotiation. I nodded, hauling the first load down. She helped, carrying a box without a word, her steps brisk. 3 trips in silence, the air thick with unspoken accusations. Outside, the evening sun cast long shadows, neighbors mowing lawns, oblivious. As I loaded the final box into my car, I turned to her. "I know you're angry with me for some reason. I wish I knew what I'd done so I could fix it." Her expression stayed hard. "You didn't do anything wrong, Eleanor. You just exist in my space, in my life, in my way. David felt sorry for you, but I don't." The brutality of it stole my breath, cleaner than any lie. I got into the car, rolled down the window. "Will you at least tell me if there's a formal reading of David's will? I assume he left something." Her puzzlement was real. "Why would he leave you anything? You're not his wife, and it's not like you ever contributed financially." I smiled faintly, the $40,000 flashing in my mind. Of course, silly of me. Driving away, I didn't look back, but in the rear view, she stood watching until I turned the corner. The Hampton Inn on Route 9 appeared soon after, its sign a beacon of temporary solace. Checking in, I lugged suitcases to a room smelling of starch and solitude. The bed sagged under me as I sat, staring at the mirror. Widow, childless, homeless, worthless in her eyes. But that stirring in my chest grew sharper now, like anticipation. Stephanie thought she'd discarded me easily, but David had been a better son than she knew. 2 weeks blurred in that room. Online apartment hunts, budget spreadsheets, microwave meals. Savings dipped, but I managed. Then, as I pondered my next move, the phone rang. Mr. Morrison's voice pulled me forward, a bridge to what came next. The lawyer's call came on a rainy afternoon, 2 weeks into my hotel exile, just as I was scrolling through listings for senior apartments that promised independent living, but looked more like waiting rooms for the end. "Mrs. Fairfield, this is James Morrison, from Morrison and Associates. I handled your son's legal affairs." His voice was steady, professional, a contrast to the chaos in my life. I remembered him vaguely from the house closing years ago, a kind man with a firm handshake. "Yes, Mr. Morrison, I remember." He explained the probate was complete, and the will reading was set for next Tuesday at 2 p.m. "Your presence is required." Required? The word sparked a flicker of hope amid my dwindling savings. Stephanie had dismissed any inheritance for me, but perhaps David had left a token, his father's watch maybe, or childhood albums. "I'm sorry, but there might be confusion," Stephanie thought. He interrupted gently. "The will specifies you as a beneficiary. I'll see you Tuesday." Hanging up, I stared at the phone, the rain pattering against the window like tentative applause. David had thought of me after all. The weekend dragged with anticipation. I browsed more rentals, calculating deposits against my pension, but my mind wandered to what might await. Monday, I ironed my best dress, the black one from the funeral, wanting to appear composed, not desperate. Tuesday arrived crisp and clear, the kind of day David would have loved for a walk. I sat in the parking lot of Morrison & Associates at 1:45, watching Stephanie pull up in a silver BMW, dressed in a sleek black outfit that screamed expense. She wasn't alone. Marcus, her brother, trailed her, suit sharp, phone in hand. They didn't see me as I entered the reception area moments later. Stephanie's face soured instantly. "What is she doing here?" she demanded of the receptionist. "Mrs. Fairfield is here for the will reading." "Which Mrs. Fairfield?" Her voice pitched higher. "Both, apparently." Marcus whispered something, and she sat across from me, her glare like ice. I folded my hands, heart racing but face calm. Mr. Morrison appeared at 2 p.m. sharp, ushering us into his office. The room smelled of polished wood and old books, his desk a mahogany barrier. He was in his 60s, silver-haired, eyes kind behind glasses, the type of lawyer who valued ethics over billable hours. "Ladies, gentlemen," he began, settling in, This is difficult, but David was clear in his wishes. I'll read the will fully, then address questions. Stephanie leaned forward, eager, Marcus with notepad ready. I waited, breathing steady. The reading started predictably. Stephanie got the house, cars, retirement accounts, life insurance. She nodded at each, glancing at me with smug satisfaction, as if tallying her victory. The house alone was worth $500,000, the insurance $200,000, security she'd craved. Marcus jotted notes, his pen scratching softly. Then Mr. Morrison's tone shifted, a subtle cue. There's one final provision, added 3 months ago. The room tensed. Stephanie stopped nodding, eyes sharpening. Marcus set down his pen. I held my breath, fingers twisting in my lap. He cleared his throat. To my mother, Eleanor Fairfield, who provided the down payment for our home and never asked repayment, I leave the contents of Safety Deposit Box 3537 at First National Bank, with all documentation and accounts therein. Silence fell, thick and charged. What's Safety Deposit Box? Stephanie's voice cut sharp. David never mentioned it. Mr. Morrison adjusted his glasses. He maintained it privately, specifying it for his mother. I was stunned. David had kept this secret from me too. What could it hold? Sentimental items, perhaps, or something more? Marcus leaned in. What's in it? I don't know, the lawyer admitted. David provided access instructions for Mrs. Fairfield only. Stephanie flushed. If it's valuable, it should be estate property. We need to contest this. Mr. Morrison remained mild. You're free to try, but he was competent. I witnessed it. When was this added? I asked quietly, my voice steady despite the whirl inside. February 15th, he consulted notes. The day after Valentine's, I recalled the quiet family dinner, Stephanie complaining, David subdued. Now it made sense. Stephanie stood abruptly. This is ridiculous. Marcus, let's go. We'll challenge tomorrow. But Mr. Morrison held up a document. Before you leave, David left instructions for his mother. He handed me a sealed envelope. Bank documents and key. Access requires death certificate verification. About 3 days. Stephanie eyed the envelope hungrily. I'm coming with you to the bank. Not possible, Mr. Morrison said. Bank policy restricts to Eleanor only. She sputtered. How do we know it's valuable? Could be junk. I stood, clutching the envelope. I suppose we'll find out. In the parking lot, she cornered me by my car. Eleanor, be reasonable. Whatever's there, we should share. David would want his wife to benefit. For the first time, a smile tugged at my lips. You said he wouldn't leave me anything. Now you want to share? Her mask slipped. Don't forget, you're homeless. You need my goodwill. I opened my car door. Actually, I don't think I need anything from you. Driving back to the hotel, the envelope burned in my purse like a promise. 3 days later, paperwork done, I'd uncovered David's final gift. But for now, uncertainty mixed with hope, a balm on my wounds. Those 3 days waiting for bank approval felt like an eternity stretched thin. Each hour in the hotel room a mix of anxious pacing and forced distractions, crossword puzzles half-finished, TV shows blurring into noise. The envelope from Mr. Morrison sat on the dresser, its seal unbroken, a tangible link to David that I guarded like a secret. Mornings, I'd sip weak coffee from the lobby machine, staring out at the parking lot, cars coming and going like lives in motion while mine idled. Afternoons brought more apartment searches, but my focus wavered, drawn back to what the box might hold. Sentimental junk, Stephanie had sneered, but David's addition to the will suggested more. Evenings, I'd lie awake, replaying the reading, her flushed anger, Marcus's calculated whispers. Uncertainty gnawed, but so did a growing sense of purpose. David had planned this. Whatever waited, it was his final word. Finally, the bank called, paperwork cleared, access granted. I dressed carefully that morning, choosing a simple blouse and skirt, wanting to feel put together for this moment. The drive to First National Bank was short, traffic light, but my hands gripped the wheel tightly, knuckles white. The building loomed modern and impersonal, glass doors reflecting my determined stride. Inside, the air was cool, scented with paper and polish. Mrs. Peterson, the manager, greeted me warmly, her badge glinting under fluorescent lights. Mrs. Fairfield, we've been expecting you. My condolences on your son. Her sympathy was genuine, a rare kindness in recent weeks. She'd been briefed, leading me through security doors to the vault, her heels clicking on marble floors. Box 3537 is one of our larger units, she explained. Your son rented it 5 years ago and visited regularly. 5 years? The The revelation hit like a wave. David had been preparing long before his death, a quiet foresight that warmed my heart even as it puzzled me. We reached the vault, a room of steel and silence. Mrs. Peterson inserted the master key. I added David's, cool metal in my palm, his touch lingering in memory. The box slid out heavy, briefcase-sized, its weight surprising. "Take your time in the viewing room," she said, escorting me to a small, windowless space with a table and chair. The door closed softly, leaving me alone with the box, its lid gleaming under the lamp. My hands trembled as I lifted it, the hinge creaking faintly. Inside, atop neatly organized papers, lay a letter in David's handwriting. "Mom." Tears pricked instantly. I unfolded it carefully, his words jumping off the page. "If you're reading this, then I'm gone. And Stephanie has probably shown you exactly who she really is. I'm sorry for that. But I'm not surprised. I've known for years what kind of person I married, and I've been preparing for this possibility." My breath caught. He knew? The letter continued, explaining the $40,000 down payment I'd given, how he'd invested it secretly, adding from his salary when possible. "It's not just repayment," he wrote. "It's what careful investing has grown into." Setting the letter aside, my fingers shaking more now, I delved into the documents beneath. Bank statements, investment portfolios, account access codes, all in my name. Balances leaped out, $185,000 across various funds, compounded over 5 years. Numbers danced, stocks, bonds, mutual funds, David's careful choices yielding security I'd never imagined. But there was more, a folder labeled documentation. Inside, printed emails, text screenshots, even photos of credit card bills. One text from Stephanie to her sister 6 months back. "God, I can't wait until that old bat finally moves out. Then we can turn her room into the home gym." Another, plotting with Marcus to convince David I should pay more despite the mortgage covered by his salary. Emails mocked my gullibility, joking about evicting me post-death. Evidence spanned years, manipulation, deceit, cruel asides. My vision blurred with tears, not just sorrow but rage and validation. David had seen it all, protected me silently. The final paragraph brought sobs. "You deserve better than how she's treated you. Take this money and build a life where no one can make you feel unwanted. And Mom, don't tell Stephanie until you're safely away. Trust me." All my love, David. I sat there nearly an hour, absorbing every page, the room's quiet amplifying my racing thoughts. How had he endured this knowledge? His quiet dinners, subdued moods, now explained. Mrs. Peterson knocked softly later, helping transfer documents to an envelope, explaining account access. "Your son thought of everything," she said kindly. Walking to my car, the weight lifted slightly, replaced by empowerment. My phone rang, Stephanie, voice syrupy. "Eleanor, wondering if you'd like lunch today. We could discuss the box." I smiled at my reflection in the window. "That's generous. I'll be there at noon." It was time. She'd learned the underestimated can surprise. But first, I'd secure the funds, transferring a portion online that afternoon, watching digits confirm my new reality. Securing the funds that afternoon brought a sense of solid ground under my feet for the first time since David's death, the banking app on my phone glowing with confirmation as I transferred a modest amount to my checking account, watching the balance climb like a promise fulfilled. It wasn't just money. It was David's voice from beyond, saying, "I've got you, Mom." The hotel room felt less confining as I prepared for lunch the next day, ironing a light blouse and choosing earrings that caught the light, small acts of reclaiming dignity. Sleep came easier that night, dreams weaving through memories of David teaching me to use investment apps years ago, his patient explanations now revealed as part of his plan. Morning light filtered through curtains, and I sipped coffee slowly, rehearsing in my mind how I'd handle Stephanie's probes. No rush to reveal all. Let her unravel herself, just as David had anticipated. The drive to the house, her house now, stirred mixed emotions. The familiar street lined with trees David had planted, their leaves whispering secrets. I arrived at exactly noon, carrying a small gift bag, my poker face honed from years of teaching restless students. Stephanie answered the door in a flowing white dress that fluttered like a flag of truce, her makeup flawless, smile wide. "I'm so glad you came. I've made your favorite chicken salad." Funny how she recalled that now when weeks ago she'd dismissed my presence. The house smelled of fresh herbs and lemon, a stark contrast to the tension simmering beneath. She led me to the dining room, table set with wedding china, porcelain gleaming under chandelier light, and a vase of roses, petals vibrant red. Effort poured into this scene. A performance for what she wanted, access to the box's secrets. We sat, and she poured iced tea, chattering about the weather, recent rain nourishing the garden I'd tended. I nodded politely, sipping slowly, the cool liquid steadying my nerves. Internal thoughts raced. How long until she drops the act? So, she said finally, settling with grace, fork poised over salad. I've been thinking about the will reading, about that safety deposit box. Her eyes sparkled with feigned casualness, but I saw the hunger. I took a bite, chewing deliberately. Have you? The chicken was perfectly seasoned, but it tasted like cardboard amid the charade. She leaned forward. I know we've had differences, but David would want us supporting each other. Family sticks together. Family. The word rang hollow from the woman who'd evicted me. I couldn't agree more, I replied evenly, watching her light up, thinking she'd cracked my resolve. I'm relieved. I worried you were angry about finding your own place so quickly, but I needed space to grieve. Space to grieve? More like space to spend freely. Of course. Grief affects everyone differently. She nodded eagerly. Exactly. So about what David left you. I thought we could pool resources, combine it with the life insurance. I have wonderful financial advisors. Advisors who'd likely helped her rack up debts from what David's documents showed. That's thoughtful, Stephanie. But what makes you think the box held anything valuable? She paused, fork midway, not expecting pushback. Well, David was private about finances. He must have had a reason. Private, her code for secretive, but I knew better. An interesting word choice. You know what I mean. Men and their planning. They never tell wives everything. I set down my fork, meeting her gaze. Actually, I think David told you exactly what he thought you needed. Uncertainty flickered in her eyes, a hint of fear. What did you find, Eleanor? Not yet. Build the tension. Instead, I reached for the gift bag. I brought you something. A thank you. She unwrapped it eagerly, revealing the framed photo of David's college graduation, his smile beaming. Her face softened briefly. Oh, Eleanor, this is lovely. Thank you. I thought you should have it. After all, you were such a devoted wife. The word devoted hung heavy, laced with irony. She caught, her eyes sharpening. What's that supposed to mean? Nothing. Just appreciating how you cared for my son. She set the photo down carefully, sweetness fading. Eleanor, you're being cryptic. Tell me what was in the box. I smiled, sipping tea. Documents mostly. Very interesting reading. What kind? Financial records, investment statements, correspondence. I paused. Quite a few emails and texts. Color drained from her face. Texts? David was thorough in record-keeping, especially lately. I pulled out my phone, opening photos of screenshots. Would you like to see one? This from 6 months ago. Turning the screen, the text to her sister. God, I can't wait until that old bat moves out. Then the home gym. She lunged, but I pulled back. There are dozens. This next one's enlightening. You texting Marcus about making David think I should contribute more when the mortgage was covered. Stop. Her whisper was faint, but I continued conversationally. And the email laughing about my gullibility, planning my eviction while David lived. Her composure cracked, hands trembling on the tablecloth. The air thickened, Rose's scent cloying now. This was just the beginning. The full confrontation loomed. But I'd laid the groundwork, watching her world tilt as mine steadied. The air in the dining room grew heavier as Stephanie's hand hovered near my phone. Her lunge halted, eyes wide with the realization that the game had shifted. She sank back into her chair, the white dress now seeming like a surrender flag rather than armor, her breathing shallow. I pocketed the phone calmly, letting the silence stretch, the ticking of the grandfather clock in the hall marking seconds like judgments. This is from about 6 months ago, I continued, my voice steady, drawing from the well of strength David had left me. But I wasn't done. The folder from the box rested in my bag, its contents an arsenal of truth. David documented everything, Stephanie. Every email, every text, every casual comment you've made about me over the years. Her face paled further, lipstick stark against ashen skin. He had no right to save private messages. Actually, he had every right. It was his house, and you were discussing his mother. I leaned back, crossing my arms, the chicken salad forgotten on the plate. The question is, what are we going to do about this? Her eyes darted, calculating escape routes in her mind. What do you want? The mask was off, revealing the raw ambition beneath. What? I don't want anything from you. I never did. Then why are you doing this? What's the point of humiliating me? I considered her words, the sunlight streaming through the window catching dust motes in a dance. You're right, there's no point in humiliating you. You've done that yourself. I don't understand. You threw me out the day after my son's funeral. You called me worthless, said David pitied me, that I'd contributed nothing. I stood slowly, pacing to the window, looking out at the garden where I'd planted bulbs last spring, now blooming without me. But David saw it all. Every cruel word, every manipulation, every lie. Stephanie gripped the table edge, knuckles white. And you want to know the beautiful part? He documented it not to hurt you, but to protect me. Because he knew you'd show your true colors once he was gone. You can't prove any of this in court. Court? I laughed softly, the sound surprising in its lightness. Oh, sweetie, I'm not taking you to court. Confusion furrowed her brow. You're not? Why would I? You've given me everything I need. I don't understand what you're talking about. I returned to the table, pulling the folder from my bag and placing it between us like a gauntlet. David left me more than screenshots. 5 years of evidence showing how you've manipulated us both. She stared at it, hesitant to touch. Bank statements proving house payments from David's salary the whole time I lived here. Emails with Marcus on handling the Eleanor situation. Credit card bills for luxury buys on days you claimed we couldn't afford basics. Her breathing quickened, hands fluttering like trapped birds. David saved all that? Everything, including emails to friends calling him a pushover, joking about manipulating him into seeing me as a burden. She flinched, the hit landing. What I found most interesting, I said, opening the folder. This thread where you and Marcus discussed declaring me incompetent to access my pension and Social Security. That's not, we never... No, you didn't follow through, because David discovered it and protected me. What steps? You don't have anything worth protecting. Don't I? I smiled. According to these statements, I do. Money that David grew for 5 years. Impossible. You're in a hotel. By choice while planning my next move. Not because I can't afford better. Silence fell as she processed, wheels turning. How much? None of your business. I'm his wife. I have a right. You have what he left you. The house, cars, insurance, retirement. Generous, I'd say. She shot up, chair scraping. You manipulative old witch, stealing what's mine. Stealing, David had every right to his assets. He was my husband, and he knew what kind of wife you were. Panic edged her anger. I want those statements. I'm sure you do. I'm warning you. With what? You already humiliated me, evicted me. What more? She stared, recalibrating. Eleanor, please, let's be reasonable. I was grieving, not thinking clearly. We're family. We can work this out. Family? After saying David felt sorry for me that I'd contributed nothing? I didn't mean it. I was upset. But you did, multiple times, over years. What do you want? An apology? Fine. I'm sorry for hurting you, for asking you to leave, for everything. Now, can we discuss the money? Nothing to discuss. Of course there is. If it's significant, I can help invest it. You mean spend it? I picked up my purse. Let me be clear. The money is return on my $40,000 down payment, invested 5 years. Her mouth gaped. Did you think it was a gift? David never forgot it was a loan. How much now? I showed the app balance, $185,000. She steadied herself on the table. That's almost the life insurance. Yes, David ensured I was cared for. That should be split. Based on what? That you're his wife and I'm just his mother? The words stung but clarified. You're right, I am just his mother, who raised him, supported him, lent the down payment for this house you threw me from. I shouldered my purse, and that was enough for him to protect me from depending on anyone. Wait, she called as I headed out. We can fix this. I was stressed, worried about finances. I pulled one last document. Worried? Like the $15,000 charged before he died? Spas, clothes, New York trip, while claiming grocery worries? That's not, I wasn't. Planning to live off insurance, ditching the inconvenient mother-in-law. She collapsed into the chair, fight draining. You don't understand the pressure to be perfect wife, hostess? No, I don't. I was busy caring for your husband while you spent his money. I loved David. You loved what he provided. Tears smeared her makeup. I can't lose everything. You're not. You have the house, $200,000 insurance, retirement. Manage it well, but not for the life I planned. Then you planned wrong. A thud, her slumping forward, face gray. Defeat, pure and total. She'd lost what she thought entitled to, no charm left to reclaim it. I stood there for a moment, watching Stephanie slump in her chair. The gray pallor of her face a stark contrast to the vibrant roses on the table, their petals now seeming wilted in the heavy air. It wasn't a heart attack or fainting spell, just the weight of truth crashing down, stripping away the illusions she'd built. Her breathing came in shallow gasps, hands limp on the tablecloth, mascara running in black rivulets down her cheeks. Part of me, the compassionate teacher who'd bandaged knees and soothed tears, wanted to offer comfort, a glass of water perhaps. But the larger part, forged in the fire of betrayal and loss, held back. She'd made her choices. Now she faced them. I can't, she whispered, voice breaking. I can't lose everything. You're not losing everything, I said quietly, my tone firm but not unkind. You're losing what never belonged to you. With that, I turned toward the door, the hardwood floor cool under my shoes, each step a declaration of freedom. Outside, the sunshine hit me like a warm embrace, the sky a brilliant blue. David would have called perfect picnic weather. I slid into my car, the engine humming to life, and drove away without a backward glance, the house shrinking in the rear view until it vanished around the bend. The road ahead stretched open, lined with possibilities I'd barely begun to explore. That afternoon, back at the hotel, I packed my suitcases again, not in haste this time, but with purpose. No more generic rooms smelling of strangers. I'd found a cozy one-bedroom apartment online, deposit wired from David's funds, move-in set for next week. It had a small balcony for morning coffee, a kitchen where I could bake David's favorite apple pie from memory. Simple joys, but mine now, unencumbered. Reflecting on it all that evening, sitting on the bed with David's letter in hand, his handwriting a lifeline across the divide, I marveled at his foresight. 5 years of quiet preparation, investing not just money but trust in my future. He'd seen Stephanie's nature, the manipulations, the spending sprees disguised as necessities, the cruel asides about me being a burden. Yet he'd stayed, perhaps hoping she'd change, or maybe for stability's sake. But he'd protected me, documenting her words not for vengeance, but safeguard. Take this and build a life, he'd written, and I would. Classes at the community center, painting, maybe, or book club. Visits to my sister in Phoenix, tickets booked with ease now. No more scraping by, security wrapped in his love. Tears came then, healing ones, washing away the residue of hurt. David had been the man I'd raised, kind, thoughtful, loyal, even in death. Meanwhile, I imagined Stephanie alone in that big house, wedding china mocking her solitude, credit card bills piling like accusations. She'd inherit comfortably. Yes, the policy, accounts, but without the extra she'd schemed for, her planned life would require adjustments. No more lavish trips on a whim, perhaps a job after years of leisure. Consequences, not cruelty, justice in its purest form. I felt no glee, just closure, the chapter turning. Days blurred into action, signing the lease, buying linens in soft blues, unpacking boxes with care. Friends called, condolences turning to congratulations as I shared snippets, carefully, without details of the drama. A fresh start, I'd say, and mean it. The money grew in my mind not as windfall but foundation invested wisely as David had taught. Nights brought dreams of him now, not nightmares, laughing in the garden, his hand on my shoulder. You did good, Mom. Waking, I'd smile at the ceiling, gratitude filling the space grief had hollowed. Stephanie called once, voice tentative, but I let it go to voicemail, her pleas for talking it out unnecessary now. Boundaries firm and final. A month in, settled in my apartment, plants on the windowsill thriving, I hosted my first dinner. Neighbors, simple pasta, laughter echoing. No shadows lingered, light had won. Sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's justice, served when needed, with a side of empowerment. David had ensured that, his legacy not in dollars but dignity restored, and in quiet moments I'd whisper thanks to the air, feeling his presence, the bond unbroken. As the days unfolded into a gentle rhythm, I found myself waking to the soft chirp of birds outside my new window, the sunlight filtering through sheer curtains in a way that painted the room with hope. The apartment became a sanctuary, each corner arranged with intention, bookshelves lined with favorites, a cozy chair by the lamp where I'd read into the evening, losing myself in stories that mirrored my own journey of resilience. Grief still visited, like an old friend who knew when to linger and when to leave, but it no longer defined me. Instead, I embraced small rituals, morning walks in the nearby park, leaves crunching underfoot as I reflected on David's wisdom, his quiet acts of love that had shielded me from the storm. Stephanie faded into the background, her attempts at contact unanswered, allowing space for both of us to heal in our own ways. I volunteered at the local library, sharing tales with children whose wide eyes reminded me of David's youth, passing on the legacy of kindness he'd embodied. Financially secure, I donated modestly to heart health causes, honoring his memory in tangible whispers. Life softened around the edges. Edges once sharp with betrayal, now smoothed by time and understanding. And in the quiet hush of twilight, as stars emerged like gentle promises, I'd sit on the balcony, a cup of tea warming my hands, feeling the world's vastness and my place within it, small yet profoundly connected. "Thank you, David," I'd murmur to the breeze, for teaching me that true strength blooms from love's enduring roots.